Welcome to another weekly Forex forecast. We start as usual on the DXY on the weekly time frame. We had a very strong bearish week last week. We had a bullish high test candle the previous week, but overall we are still sitting here on the low here to the left. And we discussed a few times before already, it might take some time for price to stick around here, accumulate more volume before we see the next bigger directional move. Going down here to the 4-hour time frame, we see we have some structure, but not too much. We did retest this low here to the left. We had a structure here. We were discussing this potential bullish structure here last week with this strong middle section, and then we were looking here for a turnaround. Instead, price broke below this high here again, and then now retested and is kind of in no man's land. So right now it looks more likely for price to finish the move here to the downside, to retest this low one more time, and that's also what I'm looking for at least the first half of next week, to at least for price to tap one more time into this low here before we then might see a bigger reaction in this area here. On the euro US dollar on the weekly time frame, of course it's more or less the inverse picture. We finished on a very strong bullish candle, and I'm now looking for a bullish continuation here. I'm going straight to the 1-hour time frame. We discussed the structures a few times. We had this overall corrective price action here. Price finally broke through, but then failed to continue in this area here, to continue short. That's what we were looking for initially. Instead, price broke back into this overall more messy, more corrective price action, and now I'm looking for a follow-through, a bullish follow-through for price to reach this previous high here to the left, and that would be way more than enough room for a bullish a long trade here in this area. Pound US dollar on the weekly looks similar. It looks like we have a bit of momentum now. We had this nice initial impulsive move. We have this correction here, and now we are in the next impulsive move. We broke the high here to the left, and we have now some other goals here to the left, including more this value area here to the left here, a higher time frame value area. So I'm looking here similar to euro US dollar. I am looking for a long continuation, and I'd like to see a bigger bullish bull flag continuation here in this area. We have a small liquidity area here on the 1-hour time frame, and it would be nice if we see early next week on Monday some form of a deliberate price action here in form of a 1, 2, 3 bullish continuation pattern, then definitely entering along in this area here. New Zealand dollar, US dollar, we were already looking initially for long plays. Then there were some short plays, short-term short trades in between during last week, because you can see these moves are fairly large. Here going to the 4-hour time frame, overall I'm still in for a long continuation. We have this impulsive move here, we have this correction here, and it looks now we are starting to gain some momentum for the next impulsive move to the upside, at least into these areas here. We left these gaps here and looking now for price to close these gaps, and I'd like to see here a deliberate price action, preferably retesting this high here to the left in form of a bull flag continuation, a 2-touch or a 3-touch structure in this area here. US dollar Canadian, I was initially looking last week for a long continuation. However, we have this very strong bearish week last week, which basically retraced the whole move. We are still in an overall impulsive move here now. Then we are in a correction, and that could be enough for price action to drive price at least into this area here to the left, and I'm now looking for a short continuation. It's a bit a tricky one. We need a very deliberate price action. I'm going down here to the 1-hour time frame. The minimum I'd like to see is, you can see here we are trading through this low here to the left, and I'd like to see a very deliberate 3-touch structure here in this area for a short continuation. It could be something bigger here. US dollar Canadian tends to if it's in momentum, then we can see momentum kicking in and it's moving quite fast, and sometimes it really just start to mess around, and you can see it really took some time here for this price action before we then see the next initial or the next impulsive move to the downside. So therefore we really need very deliberate price action in form here of a 1, 2, 3 at least on the 1 hour time frame to then enter a short continuation. US dollar yen on the weekly time frame, we are looking for price to close the gap here to the low. We have here on the 4 hour time frame, we can see it clearer. We have a nice expanding structure into this liquidity area here to the left, and then we started to sell off. We had an initial impulsive move, and then this is a bit more corrective price action. We are now approaching this area of interest here to the left. We still have a small gap here, and as long as there is a gap, I'm looking for a deliberate price action structure, a bit more a flat structure here, because we see that often we have this kind of a running channel, and then we see a bit more a flat deliberate bear flag structure before then price drops out. And it would make sense for price to close the gap here to the next higher time frame value area to the low, and that's what I'm looking for in this area here. Australian dollar yen. On the weekly time frame, these yen pairs are a bit conflicting price action. We can see we had here a very nice impulsive run to the upside. We have a small gap here to this continuation, actually consolidation here to the left, and we now have the second, it's actually the third bearish week, a bit an undecided price action. Going down to the daily first, we can see we finished with a nice bullish low test candle into this low here to the left, which makes me believe I'm leaning a bit more towards a bullish move next week into these areas here to the left to close this gap before we then see or might see a bit more directional reaction here in this area. And so going down to the 1 hour time frame, I'm looking next week, especially early next week, for a bullish continuation. I'm aware that it is a bit more risky, but we have finished this structure here. We had a 1, 2, 3. We have a very strong sell-off, but then we failed to connect here to the downside. Instead, we retraced the whole move also very impulsively, and we are now starting to stall in price, and I'm looking for deliberate price action on the 1 hour time frame for a long continuation in this area. Canadian dollar yen. On the weekly time frame, we discussed that on and off. We finally finished this overall expanding structure. Actually, already in the previous week, we discussed that multiple times. We can see it more clear here on the 4 hour time frame. We had a structure within structure. We tapped this override area and then started to sell off fairly aggressively. We have a nice impulsive move, and then some very corrective price action here, and this could go either way. Overall, I'm still looking in the bigger picture. It looks like we have here a first impulse. We are now in a correction here, and it would then make sense for price to drop further for the next impulsive move to the downside. However, I am aware that the price action overall is a bit conflicting. I'm looking now for price to tap this area here one more time, because we can see here we had this price action element here retesting these lows here, then broke down, then we have a very clear continuation, bear flag continuation structure here, and then we ended up in this more corrective, more messy price action here, and we left these gaps to this previous structure here, and I'm looking for price to close these gaps and then showing some form of lower time frame bear flag continuation to then enter a short. However, if we see price breaking above all this price action here and then we see some form of bullish continuation, then of course we would change the bias and look for longs. But right now, as long as we are trading within this area, I'm leaning more towards short continuation. Euro Canadian dollar. Also a bit the conflicting one on the weekly time frame. We can see we have conflicting price action. We still have this gap here to the higher time frame value area, and we had now bearish, bullish, bearish weeks, and we ended on a big wick here. Still a bearish week, so I'm looking now for price to continue the move to the downside for a bigger structure, but I am aware that price could snap back to close the gap here to the high. On the 1 hour time frame, we can see it would make sense for price to further sell off. We had this structure here to the left. We left a nice liquidity area here, and then we still have a gap. We had gaps here, 2 gaps, another structure, and then finally closed the gap, started to sell off, and we are now in a bit more of a momentum run to the downside, and we left this small liquidity area on the lower time frame. And I'd like to see some deliberate price action into this liquidity area to then enter a short for the next bigger move to the downside. Euro pound on the weekly time frame, we can see we are clearly in a downtrend. We are clearly in a bearish momentum run. We have this bigger gap here to the higher time frame value area to the low, and we are now, there's no reason to look for a long place right now, even though we are now in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row, bearish weeks in a row, but we can see we are in a nice bearish momentum run. We had this expanding structure sold off, and I'm now looking for continuation here. I am aware where we are positioned. You can see here to the left we have nothing to worry until the next lows here, this area of interests here, but it can take a while for price to accumulate a bit more volume in this area, so these structures can get a bit messier, a bit more complex. So the minimum I'd like to see is a very deliberate 1 hour structure here. I'm going down to the 1 hour time frame. You can see this liquidity point. This overall expanding structure is finished, and we had the sell-off, we had a deliberate liquidity point here, and I'd like to see price retracing into this area to then enter a short continuation on these levels. US dollar Swiss francs on the weekly time frame, we said we are in buying territory, which was correct. We had a retest of this low here. We are trading through this bigger low here to the left, and we had a bullish high test candle last week, and now a very, very strong bearish week with a strong full body close going down to the 4 hour time frame. You can see price did respect some structure. We had this nice 1, 2, 3 here. A bit too high, price overshot, but we can see here we have a deliberate middle section, a very nice clean finished structure. Then price failed to sell off impulsively. Instead we get this corrective price action, and then finally got a little bit impulsive moves in mid last week, and I'm now looking for price to form at least a deliberate 2-touch structure here on the 4 hour time frame. It's a Swiss francs pair, so I'd like to play them in higher time frame, so at least a 4 hour deliberate 2-touch continuation structure to then enter a short in this area. Then at the very end, as a bonus pair, I still have nat gas on watch. It's most likely not ready next week. Might take another week until we see something, but we can see here we had a nice move into this low here, clear rejection, a strong bearish impulsive move. We are now in a corrective phase. I'm going down to the 4 hour time frame. We can see we are forming a bigger structure. We have nice liquidity points here, a nice liquidity area here. We have a potential 1, 2, 3 for price to finish this move here, but yeah, this might take another whole week. That's why I have it as kind of a wild card here at the end of my watch list, and not actively in the watch list, just an alarm here to see what happens. So yeah, that's it. That's my watch list for next week. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.